How's it going, everyone? We are through the first couple of weeks of EV Grove, and you know what that means. The counter decks are finally starting to come out. So I'm going to go over the best decks in the format, how have their matchup spreads evolved, and what are these counter decks that are coming out of the woodwork trying to take these big decks down. If you are enjoying the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video. Let's get into it. Now, what I'm going to do is walk you through the top 5 decks based on play rate. So number 1 is still going to be Sylveon Greninja. Not much has really changed with the list. This is currently the best performing list at the moment in the Ursaday Pocket Weekly, and the deck is still just as strong. Sylveon is able to get you double Greninja online at times on your second turn. It's really ridiculous. It is a super ridiculous deck. Yeah, and again, not much has changed. Down here I have the other tech cards as well. Some other successful lists are playing the one of Iono or the one of Irida. Usually they make room for that by getting rid of the Pokemon communication and slotting in one of these additional supporters or the red card potentially. Those are kind of your flex cards. If I was running one of these additional supporters, I would probably get rid of the communication before I got rid of the red card. But those are your options when building this deck. Let's go take a look at the matchups. So Sylveon continues to have one of the more impressive matchup spreads, even with these counter decks coming out, starting to become more popular. These are things like mainly electric stuff. Electric stuff is starting to make a rise in the meta. Now we see up here favored Greninja ORICORIO. It basically has the same strategy as Sylveon, just without having the explosive draw, and their ORICORIO, which is supposed to wall REXs, doesn't really matter because we have Greninjas to deal with it. Magnezone ORICORIO, same thing, just they don't have the Greninjas to target exactly what they want to. We're able to deal with the Magnezones, and we're able to deal with the ORICORIOs. Rampardos, this is meant to showcase SILVALLY Rampardos, slightly favored there. Guzzlord, slightly favored. ORICORIO Luxray, not a lot of data available for this, but seeing how it has done against this deck in recent tournaments, it seems like Sylveon Greninja does not really have much of a problem with most of these ORICORIO based decks. Tapu Koko Arceus is the only one that I'm not really sure where to put it. I am not a Tapu Koko Arceus player. This is really the first time I've seen the deck. In recent tournaments though, Sylveon Greninja is having no problem at all with Tapu Koko Arceus. It's like a 59% win percentage in the recent tournaments against it. But if you look at past results, it was a little bit negative for Sylveon Greninja. So we'll just kind of have to see how it goes from here. Right now, I am more apt to put it into slightly favored than even, but this is just sort of the placeholder. Buzzwole, Garchomp are both going to be even matchups for you. Garchomp's going to come down to how hard did they pop off, how hard did you pop off. Slightly unfavored. Again, this is a strange one. Sylveon Greninja in some of the recent tournaments has been taking a really good matchup against it on paper or just by the results. Sylveon Greninja has like a 60% win percentage against Charizard, but overall across all of the meta, way more games played, Charizard is a bad matchup or a slightly bad matchup for Sylveon Greninja, and it makes sense. Once Charizard's powered up, ready to go, and can really just get through anything on your opponent's side. And if they tech Red or Guzma, you're gonna have an even better matchup against these cards because you will be able to one-shot anything with a giant cape. Flareon, Leafeon, tricky matchup for the deck for sure. This is my main deck, and it's a tough matchup. Sylveon Greninja can get going really fast. You don't have, the most explosive power, but through your damage modifiers, you are able to just use Flareon to sort of push through their Pokemon a little bit quickly. ORICORIO, SILVALLY. Now, this one should be up here. Very slightly unfavored. Honestly, closer to even than anything. Just the SILVALLY can be really powerful. It can be something that can sort of deal with the Greninjas while you set up for the double ORICORIO board state at the end of the game. And Solgaleo and Giratina. I mean, Solgaleo is going to one-shot your Greninjas. It's going to one-shot your Sylveons without capes. And Giratina Darkrai has not been a great matchup for this deck overall either. But you can see here, this is the big draw of the deck. Like, you're not taking very many abysmal matchups. Like, nothing here is sub 41% matchup. That is still totally doable. And you're taking a lot of even to slightly favored matchups. Like, there's nothing here that you really auto lose to. It is, again, a fairly skill-based deck. Having Greninjas and being able to ping with Greninja every single turn is something that takes a little bit of thought in this game. So it attracts very high-level players to this deck because of how many options you have and how good the matchup spread is for it. Now we've got Charizard EX, which was seeing some play, but is now the second most played deck in these tournaments. And this is the list that I've been playing. It's also the best placing list right now. I really like this list. I don't know where I would make the space for these other tech cards, the red or the Guzma. Both I think are good. Red can improve your time. Both red and Guzma are kind of going to do the same thing in improving your time against Sylveons that have a cape attached to them, Darktinas that have a cape attached to them. You'll see the matchup spread when we go over that they just might not be necessary because those matchups are already good. Red and Guzma would only serve the purpose of slightly elevating those matchups. I really love the Flareon in this deck. The Flareon is really your only out to ORICORIOs. You'll see a lot of the ORICORIO stuff is almost lost no matter what. There might be a time where we say, all right, ditch the Flareon. This is, we're losing these matchups anyways. For the latter, though, I like the Flareon on there because you do run into some weirder ORICORIO decks. And when you're just playing a best of one, the Flareon can be your out to dealing with it and give you those wins. So for ranked play, I like having the Flareon in there. I would not trade it. Maybe in tournaments later on, we see players ditch the Flareon because, again, outside of dealing with ORICORIOs, which are already kind of shot for you, it's not going to do that much. It's hard to find 3 energy attachments for the Flareon to get any real value out of it. But Double Lily, Sabrina, Mars, Double Lily, heal the Charizard, obviously. Sabrina, you need some sort of Gust in this deck. I can't imagine playing any deck without a form of Gust. I think it's throwing. And Sabrina's just better than Cyrus because there's almost nothing you're not just one-shotting and dealing with. Mars is good. Set your opponent's hand down to low. I really just love Mars in this format over Red card. Being able to give your opponent a 2-point Pokemon, whether that be a Sylveon before you set up your Charizard, or even the one Charizard, you have the Sylveons, you're probably going to be able to set up a second Charizard, and then Marsing them down to 1 feels really, really good. And then Giant Cape to boost the health of Charizard is very, very necessary as well. So I love this list. It's the list I've been playing. This list that is doing well in tournaments. I wouldn't make any changes, but Red and Guzma are cards to consider. So looking at the matchup spread, you can see that this deck is very, very good against a lot of the top decks. The only issues we run into are with the ORICORIO decks, and Guzzlord is also not fantastic for it. Most other things we are just beating outright. And another problem with this deck is, of course, its consistency. Getting Charizard set up doesn't always happen as early as you need it to. And if you don't get Charizard set up quickly, you will fall very far behind. You will fall very, very, very far behind. And there's nothing you can really do about it. The Red and the Guzma can help to alleviate that. Like, I've had games with Charizard against Flareon, Leafeon, where they are able to get a Flareon set up, put a cape on it, and put that in the active spot while I was struggling to find my Charizard, and they're able to two-shot my Charizard through a Flareon, and then by the time my second Charizard comes up and I use Stoke, the game's already lost because they're going to be able to attack me twice before I can take the final knockout. So if you fall behind, that's where the Red or Guzma would come in handy as well. But yeah, that's sort of the reason why this deck isn't just dominating right now, is because of its inherent inconsistency. It has good matchups against these decks when it sets up. When it sets up fast, does what it wants to do by the second turn of the game, these matchups are great. You are going to have a fantastic time. It's not going to be difficult for you to blow through these decks. When you're struggling with your consistency, it's gonna be slightly worse. And when you hit an ORICORIO deck, there's really not a lot you can do. That Flareon can get you wins, but it will not always, depending on how your opponent has set up and is ready to respond to the Flareon after it attacks once. So that's kind of Charizard in a nutshell. Very, very strong. If it gets set up, it can take out all of these top decks, no issue. If it hits an ORICORIO or doesn't set up, it kind of starts to fall, and that's why Charizard is not every, you know, it's not winning every tournament. It's not half of top 8s in every single tournament, because it does have these things keeping it down. Our number 3 slot most played deck in the meta at the moment, Flareon Leafeon. This was a deck we talked about last week where it, for some reason, was not in tournaments, even though I thought it was incredibly strong. The matchup spread looked fantastic for it, but now we're seeing players like realizing, oh wait, this deck is broken. So here is the main list. The only other tech card I can think that you might want in here is, instead of Mars, you go with a red card. Other than that, this is the list I play. This is the list that does well in tournaments. Shout out Jody. He was kind of the one that I first saw really figure out the supporter line and the Pokemon line. There were a lot of weird lists when this first came out that I was not sold on, and then when I tried Jody's list, I was like, okay, that's it. That's how we're supposed to play this. This is it. I really love the one basic Leafeon. I don't think you need 2 basic Leafeons or a baby Flareon from Genetic Apex. I love having the Sabrina in here, which early list we're not including. I think this list is perfect as is. I would not change a card from my play. I don't ever see myself missing anything. I lose simply because I did not manage my resources well enough, either with the Eevee bags or the Sabrina or the Mars, or I simply did not draw well, which is going to happen in Pokemon Pocket. But yeah, this is the list. I would play it as is. If you want to do a red card instead of a Mars, you know, go for it. But again, I really love Mars in this because you are able to give up the Leafeon, hit him with the Mars, put him down to 1 while the Flareon starts to do its job. I'm a big fan of the list. And here we are with Flareon Leafeon's matchup spread. By the way, guys, if you enjoy that I do the matchup spreads and the other tech card inclusions, you know, that extra little stuff to help you be just a little bit more well-informed when you're playing ranked, make sure you guys sub, like the video. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so Flareon Leafeon, fantastic. We are taking great matchups against a lot of stuff, losing slightly. Well, not slightly. ORICORIO SILVALLY and ORICORIO Luxray are both not great, and neither is Magnezone ORICORIO. Magnezone ORICORIO is like right on the edge of being unfavored. It's literally drawing the line. If there was a middle tier between these two, it would go there. But I'm doing it slightly unfavored just so it doesn't look ugly. But it's probably more unfavored than anything. As I say that, and I have these D's tier. Does that annoy you guys? It annoys me. Anyways. You take great matchups, and this deck reminds me, at least its matchup spread, reminds me a lot of Charizard's matchup spread, where we're taking really good matchups against the field. The only issues we run into are ORICORIOs, and then, of course, Charizard is not great. Speak of the devil. Charizard's not a great matchup. It is doable if they are slow. But the difference is that when we're playing Flareon Leafeon, it is a much more consistent deck than Charizard Sylveon is. Charizard Sylveon needs to get that Charizard online very quickly. Flareon Leafeon, we have just, you know, many options at our disposal. Built-in energy acceleration with Leafeon. It is just a more consistent deck because it is stage 1, and we essentially have 4 of the same basics. We're always going to start with an Eevee. Charizard Sylveon, you can start with an Eevee and then have to, you know, use an attachment to retreat into the Charizard. That's going to delay you a turn. Just overall a more consistent deck. So I'm a much bigger fan of Flareon Leafeon over Charizard. Again, Charizard, when it pops off, it's going to do what Charizard does. But Flareon Leafeon is like the safer Charizard as far as matchup spreads go. They do not play the same at all either. And I like how Flareon Leafeon plays a lot more. I feel like I'm actually playing the game. Charizard Sylveon is a lot of, all right, set up quick. If I don't set up quick, I need Lily from one of these decks, or from this. I have 8 cards left in deck. it has to be a Lily or I lose. You know, that's the sort of situations you find yourself in with Charizard. Not as much with Flareon, Leafeon. Flareon, Leafeon, you're very, not rarely, because it is Pokemon Pocket, but you're not as often going, ooh, this top deck has to be exactly this card or I lose. You know, you have the draw. You have the one Sylveon to draw you a card or to draw you 2 cards. You have all these attacker options. I like the Flareon, Leafeon deck a lot more from a playing standpoint. You know, what plays am I able to make during a game, and a consistency standpoint as well. So, you know, I would say I like Flareon, Leafeon way more than Charizard, which has a similar matchup, but it's totally up to you. You know, Charizard might get you much more stress-free wins than Flareon, Leafeon, because you get put in the blender. This Sylveon Greninja, yes, slightly favored, but man, they do not make it easy. They do not make it easy. That is always a very, very stressful matchup, especially if they're able to get a couple Greninjas online. Honestly, at any point in the game. When they get that double Greninja set up, oh my god, put your thinking cap on, man. You're in for a ride on that one. So that's the deck list. Fire Energy only, by the way. I don't know if I have to say it. If you haven't seen the deck list, it's everywhere. This deck is everywhere now. But yeah, it's Fire Energy only. You get your Grass Energies from the Leafeon. Very cool deck. My favorite deck to play in this game right now. Now, our 4th most played deck right now is actually SylvALLY ORICORIO. I love this deck a lot last format. I love ORICORIO stuff. It did fall off a bit because ORICORIO became less strong, but we're seeing a lot more ORICORIO being a counter pick to these decks. Some tech cards, there's a lot here to talk about. So some other techs that are just straight up not in this list are the Leaf or the Pokemon Center Lady. More commonly, the split decision you'll see is, are we playing double Zeraora or double Giovanni? That's a little bit more common than, are we throwing in Pokemon Center Lady? Are we throwing in Leaf? But those are the cards that are not in this list that are options people have been playing in here. I don't think that the Leaf is all that necessary. I think if anything, it's kind of a win more card, like being able to use the Leaf and preserve energy, or pivot out of SylvALLY if you want to just get into attacking with an ORICORIO and leave the energy on there, or retreat out of a type null and build up an ORICORIO on the bench, and knowing you're able to do that without committing any energy to it. It just seems like a win more card. And Pokemon Center Lady is, you know, I'm sure it comes up. I'm not familiar enough with the damage numbers to know how necessary Pokemon Center Lady is. I know that a lot of lists are just not playing Pokemon Center Lady, which makes me feel that it is not necessary. I would probably rather have a second Giovanni, if anything, but I do love double Zeraora, being able to get that energy in play, knowing I will have that Dawn target later on in the game from the Zeraora. I really like it. It also essentially acts as a second out to getting SylvALLY online, you know, on your second turn, because you can start Zeraora or type null, and as long as you get the type null down and an energy attached to it, you know that you will be able to pivot into the SylvALLY and attack on your second turn, start dishing out that 100 damage. So let's get over the matchup spread, talk about this deck a little bit more in depth. So it's ORICORIO. So ORICORIO is going to farm the decks that it usually farms: Charizard, Solgaleo. Flareon, Leafeon has a really hard time. Their one attacker against the ORICORIO is the Baby Leafeon, and we have a great way to deal with the Baby Leafeon through the SylvALLY. Zeraora, you know, is not really going to do anything. It's really just on the SylvALLY. Greninja. These other ORICORIO decks come down to very, very simply, which is my secondary attacker alongside my ORICORIO able to deal with their secondary attacker better or worse? So Magnezone, ORICORIO. Magnezone will deal with SylvALLY way better than SylvALLY will deal with Magnezone, right? Once that Magnezone is online, SylvALLY is going to be two-shotting it, while Magnezone is going to be one-shotting it. Luxray, slightly different in the fact that this deck is not really going for the Sylveon route, and it is instead, they also have to, they got to pull off the Volkner to get the Luxray charged up again to maybe take out a second SylvALLY. Now, the one thing I am confused about, and there's no way this can be true, is SylvALLY ORICORIO doing great against SilVally Rampardos. That to me is very, very strange, because once a Rampardos is online, Rampardos can deal with, well, I guess if you are able to set up double SilVally or time things correctly, even still, I feel like Rampardos should have the edge here over ORICORIO. Like, the ORICORIO is doing nothing. It's really just SilVally versus SilVally, and then a Rampardos is going to help get an additional one-shot on a SilVally. I don't think this is correct. I do not agree with the data on this at all, and it's about the only one I don't. Tapu Koko, Arceus. You know, their ORICORIOs are... It's really just their ORICORIOs that can deal with their ORICORIOs, so it gets tough for them. Buzzwole, slightly favored. SilVally can take care of the Kartanas or the Pheromosas, whatever they're using in their deck, and then ORICORIO can act as a wall against that Buzzwole once he finally comes up, and your only real concern is your opponent going Celesteela and flipping a heads and knocking out the ORICORIO. It's all late game stuff, but if you played the matchup before, you know that it happens, and it's I hate it. I hate that end game. I hate the SilVally ORICORIO Buzzwole end game. I despise it. But yeah, I mean, the matchup spread here is fairly good. You're taking some great matchups. It is even against Sylveon ORICORIO. It's actually very slightly unfavored, because they are able to attack with the Greninja. Now, Greninja does not do great into SilVally, but the fact that they're able to Cyrus and get those ORICORIOs if you bench them too early, and you're both two-shotting each other, SilVally and Greninja, it's a very awkward matchup, I'm sure. Yeah, you can see why the deck's good, though. It takes a lot of these free matchups against some of these decks. Like these, Solgaleo is like a 75% win percentage matchup. You only lose if you brick like crazy. Charizard, same thing. It's very difficult to lose this matchup. Even if they get a Flareon online, you just respond with a SilVally and knock out that Flareon, and then ORICORIO can keep walling out the Charizard. So, yeah, it's a fantastic matchup spread, and it is doing very, very well right now. Its win percentage, I believe its win percentage in this tournament, yeah, it is fairly well. It's fairly good right now. It's at like almost 53%. So, deck's performing well. Seemed like a great call for this weekend, and I'm sure you will see a lot more SilVally ORICORIO on ranked if you are not just using it yourself. And our 5th most played deck, I'm so happy to see it down at 5th, but it is still here. It's Giratina Darkrai. It's Giratina Darkrai. Other techs to consider are Nihilego and the Poison Bar package to just give you a little bit more damage between turns and push your damage ceiling just a little bit farther. Let's go over to the matchup spread, see why this deck is so great. Takes a lot of very slightly favored to favored matchups against some of the more popular decks, and then just even matchups against most of the other. The only real top 5 deck you have to concern yourself with is Charizard. Charizard is not great for it, and again, if you are able to just be Giratina Darkrai, be more consistent than Charizard, you'll still be able to win against the deck. Deck struggles against some ORICORIO variants, not all of them. ORICORIO, without a lot of heals, can still find itself struggling against constant Darkrai pings and Rocky Helmet stuff. So that's why it's not a total blowout whenever Giratina Darkrai sees ORICORIOs. You usually need quite a bit of healing to outlast through those Darkrai's. It can become very, very grindy games depending on what your list look like. Giratina Darkrai can still get the edge over you through that passive Darkrai damage, or even with the Poison Barb Nihilego package that will make it even more difficult because you'll be taking even more damage between turns. So yeah, just overall, ORICORIO is not the final nail in the coffin for Giratina Darkrai at all. And again, it does very well against a lot of the decks. That's enough Giratina Darkrai. I've talked for too long about this deck. Now, I don't know if I would classify this as like counter meta or new counter meta. At least this deck has been around since the start of the format, but I wanted to talk about it because it is the 6th most played deck in the Ursaday Pocket Weekly, and it just had its first like really good finish, as in it won a, I believe, 300, oh my mic, won a 380 person tournament. So it's starting to rise up a little bit, get some decent showings for sure. And this is Guzzlord Nihilego. This is the version of the deck that won using a 1 Poipole, 1 Naganadel line. Other versions of this deck include removing the Poipole and Naganadel and playing cards like Pokemon Center Lady or Rocky Helmet. Get some more damage boosting tools in there, as well as having a little bit of heal for the Guzzlord. Now, I personally have never been a fan of this deck I've never really respected it. Every game I've played has felt like I am the one on the back foot. And when I played Poipole Naganado versions, it was like, dude, we are running 8 basics. It is so hard to find the dang correct basic that I need when I need it. I was not a fan of this deck. It felt, for being a basically all basic deck, it felt very, very inconsistent. So I personally don't love this deck at all. We'll take a look at the matchup spreads and see if that is warranted. But me personally, I just want to show it because of how good it did lately. And but also wanted to give my honest take on it, that I've never been a fan of this deck. I don't understand how anyone has played it ever. So here's the matchup spread, and you'll see, I mean, I think it speaks for itself. You have most of the most played decks being slightly unfavored to unfavored. And the Sylveon Greninja matchup, I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep itching my nose. My cat is on my lap and it is shedding like crazy. Here, I'll show you guys. Have some. Woo! All right, the camera did not pick that up as well as I wanted it to. It's good against like these ORICORIO decks and the Charizard deck, but other than that, you are just fighting an uphill battle against literally everything else. I don't understand the deck. Congrats to the player that was able to win a tournament with it, but I really don't respect the deck all that much. I think there are much better counter picks. So this is me cautioning you. If you want to counter the meta a little bit, play something, you know, a little wacky, a little fun, something you don't see every day, don't pick Guzzlord. Oh, I forgot to note real quick, I did not put Tapu Koko Arceus on here or ORICORIO Luxray on here because there's not enough data. Now, if I had to wager, I would say that ORICORIO Luxray is not all that bad, and I would say that Tapu Koko Arceus is also not all that bad. You have these Tapu Kokos and Arceus to pick up those free 2 points against you, or yeah, you can pick up the free 2 points against the Tapu Koko Arceus, and then the Nihilegos or Naganado, whatever version you play, can deal with the ORICORIOs just fine. The Luxray might be a little bit trickier because the Luxray can put down 120 damage onto a Guzzlord before you're really ready for it to be in the active spot, so I'm sure that's not fun. Maybe it's more like even, but I wouldn't think it's down here to like slightly unfavored or unfavored, but we'll have to see as the meta develops for that one. Now, this is the new deck on the block, and because of that, I do not have any other techs. I went through, I looked at the list that people were playing to some success. They're all the same. This deck is not new, but it is new to the meta. Luxray ORICORIO, it has been a thing. People have experimented with it since ORICORIO dropped, but this is the first time we're seeing it introduced into this meta and start to do well. Luxray, Volt, Bolt, discard all energy from this Pokemon, does 120 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, combos well with Volkner. Volkner allows you to attach 2 lightning energy from your discard pile to one of your Luxray or Electivire, but we're not playing Electivire in this list. There's no reason to. So you're able to Volt Bolt, Volkner, Volt Bolt again. 2 turns in a row, or even just, you know, later in the game, Rare Candy, Luxray, Volkner, all of a sudden you have a 120 snipe set up out of nowhere. So it's a very, very powerful attack in combination with Volkner and with the ORICORIO. It's very, very cool. This has been just a, you know, obviously a counter pick to the meta. ORICORIO is usually how it functions as what are the top decks? Is this going to be strong? Luxray has a really cool interaction with ORICORIO where, you know, you're worried about Sylveon Greninja, and Luxray is able to deal with those Greninjas on the bench, unless your opponent throws a cape on there, which then you have the Guzma for. But if the Greninja's in the active spot, you can just knock it out with weakness, even if it has a cape. So Luxrays can hunt down those Greninjas, give you not really an edge in that matchup, but it can give you a path to victory that some ORICORIO decks do not have access to. So it's a very, very cool deck list. I have never been a true believer in Luxray. I have gotten demolished by it on the ladder at times. In previous formats as well, just depending on the list I was playing and depending on how crazy my opponent went. Luxray can be very, very scary. Let's go over to the matchup spread. Now, this is going to be very... It's tough. There's not a lot of data out there. Again, this is a new deck to the meta, so this is kind of the early look at it to see if this is a deck that you think you should pick up and start playing. So here's the matchup spread. Again, these are very, very... Like, there are almost no numbers for this. The most played decks are these top 4 decks here in the favored category, and they all had like 10 games total played. And you also have to consider that at these tournaments that have completed where the results are showing, this deck was piloted by very, very good players, right? So they are going to be able to do this pretty consistently, or they're just going to have the edge through being better players than their opponents, while you may not have that. It is something to note that, you know, these are highly skilled pilots that are able to get these sort of results with the deck, and I can't imagine that it's the easiest deck to pilot, it being ORICORIO and Luxray having that 120 snipe. But we're seeing Flareon, Leafeon. This one makes sense to me because you are going to be able to Luxray, knock out that Leafeon, and then just go double ORICORIO, and that will be able to deal with that. Charizard makes sense. Again, Charizard only has that one of Flareon to deal with ORICORIOs, and Luxray can handily deal with that. Solgaleo has no answers to ORICORIO. Giratina Darkrai also has a hard time dealing with ORICORIO, and the Luxray is going to be able to throw damage wherever on the board, so that will be fine. ORICORIO, GRENinja. Besides the Giratina, you know, Luxray is going to be able to prey on those GRENinjas, and that's going to be great for you because that's their only other attacker besides just the ORICORIOs. And then Sylveon, GRENinja, like I discussed earlier, you will be able to knock out their only attacker that can deal with ORICORIOs with your Luxray. These even matchups here are just, there's like no data on them. They played like 1 or 2 games against these decks, so it's a little bit too early to say. SilValLY, Rampardos, I would think is fine because Rampardos can deal with Luxray. SilValLY can get through the ORICORIOs. You just have better overall attackers than they do, and you're both stage 2 decks, so I would think that Rampardos can deal with the Luxray just fine. Unfavored, again, Rampardos, it can deal with that just fine. SilValLY, ORICORIO. This one also, there's not really enough data. Honestly, it should be here in even. Sorry for putting it in unfavored, but it should be here in even. There's just not enough data to really say. SilValLY is a stage 1, which will be 2-shotting a Luxray, but Luxray is a stage 2 that will be 1-shotting a SilValLY without a cape. So it is interesting to see where that goes. But this is sort of the early idea, and it makes sense, right? You go in assuming you're going to have a good matchup to some of these bigger decks, and you'll take some poorer matchups against other decks that you're not really that worried about seeing, or you will see, but not in the same frequency that you're going to see Sylveon, GRENinja, Flareon, Leafeon. You know, you're going to see a lot of these sort of decks that you assume you're taking a good matchup to, and in tournament, you're not going to see as much of this stuff as you would on the ranked ladder. Now, there is a lot of Garchomp. There's a lot of Garchomp. There is a decent amount of Buzzwole from my experience, but there's a lot more of these. So it's I don't really know what to say about this deck. You can go test it out. Go test it out. Go run some games, whatever. You lose 10 points for it if it doesn't go well. You lose 30 to 50 points if it doesn't go well. Oh well. At least you gave it a try. Maybe you just hit the gauntlet, run into these decks that you're looking for, and the deck actually functions as it's supposed to, as we are theorizing, and it goes well for you. So that's going to be it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you sub, like the video. I'll see you on the next one.